Why don't you meet some African Christians? Why don't you meet some South American Christians? Why don't you meet some Asian Christians? Guess what? They're not Republican and they're not Democrat. In fact, they really don't care too much about the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But they do care a lot about Jesus Christ. You see, let's stop reacting to some political situation in the United States, some bias in America, okay? Christianity is not Western. Christianity began in Palestine. Christianity was not begun by a white dude. Christianity was not begun by the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Christianity was begun by Jesus of Nazareth, who claimed to be more than a man. He claimed to be God in human form. And the overwhelming evidence is the dude was in touch with reality because he died and he rose from the dead. You can trust him. You can't trust Christianity. Christianity's been used to justify the Crusades, the Inquisition, Salem witch trials, slavery in the United States. Christianity's been used to justify. How sick is that? But my African American brothers and sisters, don't give a white Christian racist the power to turn them off to the true Jesus, who wasn't white, and he wasn't a Republican, and he wasn't a Democrat, he wasn't a capitalist, he wasn't a socialist, and he wasn't a Marxist. He talked about the kingdom of God, not the kingdom of America. That's the Jesus you got to get to know.
So I have a quick question. So why do you believe that the younger generation is leaving Christianity in droves?
Oh, it's real simple. Because people want to have sex outside of marriage. They realize that I don't want to be a total hypocrite and say I believe in Jesus. So I'm going to be a moral relativist, which means I write the rules, which means I can have sex with whoever I want to, whenever I want to. Go ahead.
However, I don't think that is the case because I'm like, when I was growing up in the church, so many of them had sex outside of marriage. So many
Were they being hypocritical?
Well, let me speak. So many Christians, like I know, like literally were having sex outside of marriage.
And it's wrong.
Yeah, they were like literally, and then meanwhile, they were literally calling girls sluts and whores.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Jesus condemns that. So what's your point?
Which is true.
What's your point?
I'm not finished. I believe that a lot of the reason why like so much of Christianity is so distorted by most of the modern like churches, especially the evangelical churches.
Here we go, white America, white West. So ream on it. But so
then
what?
Again, and come to speak of it, when you say, there's African Christians, there's Asian Christians.
Yeah, far more.
And what do you think is the reason why it's so predominant in certain parts? Colonialism.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard Philip talking to an Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts? Do you know what that Ethiopian eunuch did? He went to Ethiopia, which is not in the United States. For those of us who are geographically challenged.
But the United States.
He went to Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian church is one of the oldest churches in the world, and it has nothing to do with the West. It's in Ethiopia, Northern Africa. That's one of the earliest churches. And you know where a dude named Thomas went? He went to India, to southern India. And he planted a church in southern India, which is also one of the oldest churches in the world, which means the Ethiopian church and the church in India is older than any church in the United States. Much older.
But do you want to know why a lot of Christianity was so widespread?
Oh, I would love for you. Can you come here a second? I would love for you to tell me why he, as an African American, believes in Jesus. Do you believe in Jesus? Okay, so please tell me, and I would love for you to just keep your line of thinking going, because you're doing a great job. Why does he believe in Jesus? Come on, man, give it to me.
He probably grew up with it, or...
He was colonized, right?
No.
Oh, no?
No, not...
Well, that was your line of thought. Those dumb Africans believe in Jesus because they were colonized by those horrible white folk. Give me a break.
Can you stop using the race card for once?
No, you started it.
You started it.
You started it, man.
Like, please. I mean, most people that I know that are Christians are either grew up with it, like myself, or like a lot of my relatives that were Christian, a lot of them were addicts. And they turned to Christianity because they felt like that was the only way.
Yeah. And you know what the largest group of atheists demographically in the world is? White guys. Very interesting. Yeah. The largest group of atheists demographically in the world is white males.
But I'm not white.
That's very interesting.
Not fully white, at least.
Fine, I'm not talking about you.
We know.
I'm talking about white folks. It's white males that comprise the highest percentage of atheists in the world. So please don't tell me that it's these people of different races who are colonized by Christians. Baloney. Africans understand materialism is bankrupt. Why? Because there's more to reality than making money. And Africans have put their faith in Christ, not because they've been colonized, but because they have a spiritual dimension as well as a physical dimension, and they appreciate capitalism. And that's why many African nations embrace capitalism. But they understand America is not the answer. The West is not the answer. The West is bankrupt in its moral relativism, in the evil that it does. But Jesus Christ, he is different. And that's why so many of my African American brothers and sisters have put their faith not in Christianity, not in the white man's religion, in Jesus Christ, because he is different. And just read Dr. Martin Luther King, for crying out loud. Dr. King understood that Jesus Christ is different. And that's why he called the ministers of Birmingham, Alabama, to stop their segregation, to stop their racism. And all of you who have parents who've divorced don't need me to tell you how painful divorce is. I performed a lot of weddings, and never have I performed a wedding with a guy who says, I can hardly wait to divorce her, or a woman who says, I can hardly wait to divorce him. No. Okay, so divorce is not God's best. And divorce brings pain, separation, alienation, scarring into people's lives. And too many of you standing right here, right now, know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sorry your parents divorced. I'm sorry they couldn't love each other the way Jesus calls us to. And it leads to a lot of garbage and a lot of scarring of children's lives. And it stinks.
I hope I don't get divorced, honestly. I hope I hope I end up marrying a loving man who cares for me, loves me, literally has a good job and all this stuff. And the thing about marriage is that you need to have, that it's all about cooperation. And I've noticed that a lot of these evangelical Catholic, Mormon, a lot of these marriages tend to sound so miserable.
Well, I join you in hoping that you marry someone who loves you, but I happen to hope that it'll be a woman and not a man.
It won't be a woman, that's the thing. It won't be. Here's the thing. When I hear people like you be like, oh, being gay, well, I chose this lifestyle.
I never said that.
Yeah, that's what you're implying.
No, I am not.
Yes, you
I
are.
never implied that. I never said it.
You ever heard?
I don't have the faintest idea why you're gay, and I would never choose to say why you're gay, all right? There are lots of different reasons people are gay. There are lots of different
I was born
reasons
like this.
people are bisexual. There are lots of different reasons people like to have sex with animals. I don't know.
No. Don't compare me to somebody.
I'm not comparing you. I am making a point. The point is, I don't know what motivates a person to do what they do sexually. I don't know. I worked among prostitutes and pimps in inner city Boston when I was in seminary. I don't know what motivates a prostitute to be a prostitute. I don't know what motivates a pimp to be a pimp. That's their choice.
But I'm not a prostitute. But I didn't
say you were a prostitute. You told me you're looking forward to marrying a man who cares for you, and I agreed with you. I hope that the person you marry will care for you. But I went on and pointed out that God created marriage, your sexuality, for you to enjoy with a woman who makes a lifelong commitment to you.
Well, I don't believe in God either, so that's irrelevant. You can't stay.
Well, then why do you have a rational mind? If there is no God, why is your mind rational?
Well, why?
You know what you believe? You know what you believe? You believe that your rational mind comes from the irrational.
That's you.
Is that a leap of faith?
Oh.
That's blind faith. You believe, if you're an atheist, that the rational mind comes from the non-rational or the irrational, from inanimate matter. That's scary. That is blind faith. As a theist, I know that my rational mind, which puts me in touch with reality, is a gift from a rational being, God. But you, if you're an atheist, believe, oh no, my rational mind comes from the non-rational, the irrational. Wow, that is a miracle. The only problem is you don't have a miracle worker because you don't believe in God. I'm convinced your rational mind is a gift that God has given you. Therefore, please use it well because it's very important.
Yeah, well, I'm also young, stupid. I'm a whore. I make dumb decisions all the time, but don't we all?
Yes,
don't we all?
I make dumb decisions all the time also. I'm a sinner, and I desperately need God's grace. And that's what Jesus Christ offers me through his death on the cross. I'm a dirty, rotten sinner just like you. I'm no better than you. I am no better than you. None. We both are sinners. We both have flipped God off just in different ways.
I feel like I wish this was the reading challenge on Drag Race.
Yeah,
Oh my
well, I
God.
thought you chose to stand where you're standing. I didn't know anybody forced you to stand here. Is anybody forcing you to stand
Oh,
here?
no.
All right, so if you have a free will, I respect your free will. You can stand and talk the way you want to
Want to let
stand and
anybody
talk.
else speak? How
Good,
about
all
let
right.
anybody else speak?
You bet. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I do think you can form like meaningful commitments of love without a model of being a Christian, though.
Sure, absolutely.
But I don't think they're delusional and also obligation generating, right? Like most contemporary theorists of love really do want to say like robust concern theory of like, I have such an impartial, like a partial concern for you. That justifies my love. So I'm not like sure that most people think, or for me even, I'm not sure I think that you have to have a Christian model in order to have true partial giving love, right?
Right. You don't have a Christian model, but in order to have real love, there's got to be a mind with a will. Why? Because if you say there is no God, what is reality made up of?
Well, I do
Love
think it's
is
matter
not
and
just
energy, but
matter
love
and
also
energy.
exists. No, but like I can also have love within this like confines of my brain and these emotions I have, but it's not just emotions, it's also partiality generating. It's also like now that I love, say, my partner is now my beloved and I have an extra obligations to them. So it's not just that like, oh, love doesn't matter at all.
Have you ever loved an enemy?
Have you ever loved an enemy?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean by an enemy here?
Did you love someone who hurt you?
Sounds like an antonym.
I think like that can be a charitable action, but it wouldn't be required of me to love someone who hurt me.
All right. You're choosing to say, this person is so valuable that in spite of the fact that they have threatened my survival, I'm going to love them and care for them. That is love. Now, I've experienced that, and I think almost every one of you here have experienced it. I don't care if you're an atheist, agnostic, or Christian. That experience shows you that there is some type of God, not Christ. It has nothing to do with Christ, okay? But it's got to tell you there's more to reality than matter and energy. There's this innate human being that every human being has to genuinely care for someone else, even their enemy. Now that's weird. All right?
So you're saying two premises are true, and then just assuming a conclusion. But we don't agree on those two premises. We agree on the first one, not the second one, right? But I don't have to buy into this logic that because love exists and things are material, I can't love. Again, we all experience objects of us, and we experience loving objects, we experience loving agents, loving people. We experience the partial benefits we get from our reciprocal love. But that doesn't commit us to this idea that now I have to be a materialist, right?
Yes, it does.
No, why?
An atheist is saying there is no God. That being does not exist. That's what an atheist is saying.
Sure.
In other words, an atheist is limiting reality. No, God is not real. Obviously, matter, energy, that's obviously real.
So are you going to give an argument besides just pointing and saying like material?
No,
and
I'm-
then
I'm
love
trying-
exists, so God. But that's
It's
what
very
you keep
simple,
saying
sir.
to me.
I'm trying to take your thinking to its logical conclusion, and you're not
But
following.
it's not the logical
So I'm
conclusion.
up a creek
right?
without
it's
a
not
paddle.
the logical conclusion because
You're not following.
I think love exists. That's my premise. And I primitively experience it, empirically evident that I love my partner, I love my parents.
Now the question is why?
Why do I love my parents and partner?
Yeah.
Because I have found myself in the obligation, generation, participation
Did
where
you
I
hear what you
feel
said? I have
emotion.
found myself. What is yourself?
Sure, I am Caden. I'm this person. What do
What
you
is
want?
a person?
What is a person?
Yeah, what is a person?
I don't know. Let's ask Cliff. What is a person?
If you're an atheist, a person is matter and energy evolved to a higher order. There's no personhood. There's no him. There's no me. There's a very nice hunk
Okay,
of
so we-
matter evolved to a higher order. There's a not so
keep looping
nice
back.
looking hunk of matter evolved to a higher order, okay?
keep
But
looping
that's all that is.
Where you just keep saying it is evidently material, and therefore love cannot exist in the material universe.
All right, I'm going to try and get you emotionally now. If I say to you, I believe in Jesus, and then you watch me go out and womanize, what would you call me?
Christian.
A little louder. Hypocrite.
Yeah.
If I say I'm a follower of Christ, and you watch me go out and womanize, I'm a hypocrite. Similarly,
But
if you
so
tell
many
me
Christians
I'm an
do that
atheist,
then.
but love is real, meaning by that, the ability to freely care for another person, to forgive your enemy. If you're going to tell me as an atheist that that's real, I'm going to say you are an intellectual hypocrite.
Okay, so
Because you're not being consistent with your belief. Your belief is there's no such thing as me.
No.
There's just a chemical reaction. So therefore, I don't choose to forgive him. My chemicals program me, and I do whatever I do. And it's not good, it's not evil, it just is. It's my chemicals forcing me to treat him a certain way. Does that make sense?
Things can be analytically true, though, right?
All right, fine. I think we've beaten a dead horse now.
Yeah, sure.
If you can't understand my point,
you don't
I'm
have
having a
a
rough
point.
time.
Yeah.
Okay?
No,
you guys, you're not being rational. You're being irrational.
I'm not being rational because you have two premises, but you assume premise 2 and then you just say conclusion 3 exists.
I've assumed one thing, that you love. It's the
I
only
do
thing
love.
I've said. Thank you. So my assumption is right. Now, the second question is, what is love? And if you're an atheist, you have to say, love is a biochemical reaction.
No, you don't.
Which means you don't have a free will, you just are. Your biochemical reaction in your brain is going off, and you call it love. And I'm saying that's baloney.
So you might have the biochemical reaction where I now feel pain because someone hit me. And you might have the biochemical reaction that I now feel love because I'm in an emotive state of a long-lasting relationship. Would you say those are the exact same thing?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, why though?
Because I've made my case very clear.
No, it's
I don't
not.
have to forgive him when he hurts
it
me.
because
I don't
I'm
have to
material?
love him if he's my enemy. I can freely choose to forgive him. I can freely choose to love him if he's hurt me. And he can do the same to me. We are free. We have a free will. The only way you can have a free will is if there is more to you than a chemical reaction.
I'm not
If it's
worried
just a
about that.
chemical reaction, you ain't free. Yes, sir.
So how do we love and forgive people who have deeply wronged us? How should we go about that?
Good.
Logan Paul. I love the tag team here. Logan Paul recently finished his fight, right? And he said, Christianity is the only worldview that espouses forgiveness. And so I want to forgive the guy, I don't remember his name, who was sending out explicitly sexual photos of my new wife. I forgive you, he said. And Christianity makes a lot of sense because of what it says about forgiveness. I don't take Logan Paul, anything he says as gospel, except that. I was pretty impressed by him. Wow, secondhand smoke is great right now, I guess. So forgiveness from a biblical perspective is looking at every single person and saying, cancel culture is wrong. You are to always forgive, but it's always to be offered within the context of justice. See, I love that you brought up the inconsistency with the church, because in the church, forgiveness has oftentimes in the past been messy, in the sense of, if a woman was abused, if there was domestic violence, sometimes a priest would come and say, oh, but you have to forgive your husband who abused you right now. And there was no justice.
Don't most churches still kind of?
Well, it happens everywhere, in every social institution. I'm picking on the church for you. So understanding, though, that biblical forgiveness is you seek after justice, but then there's grace as well. And Jesus Christ showed that on the cross. He's seeking after justice to forgive our sins, saying it's wrong. So there's no cheap grace, but then he's offering forgiveness even to the thief on the cross next to him, who is having this tremendous heart change. And by doing so, saying, you will be with me in paradise today. Now, practically, how do you go about, as a Christian, forgiving? One would be not gossiping about a person who wronged you to a big group. Second would be, don't wish their ill. And then thirdly would be, break up the thought patterns in your minds, which keep saying, I want to get that person back. I want to get that person back. And so the Christian worldview, like Logan Paul talked about, is all about don't cancel another person. Love your enemy. The Christian faith was the only worldview, and still today is the only worldview, that says to love and forgive your enemy. I mean, that is so foreign and weird in this culture today, because it's cancel them. Oh, I oftentimes will have people come up to me, even in our church, and say, hey, that person wronged me once. I can cancel them, push them out of my life, right? Wrong. And thank heaven it's wrong, because this society would fracture completely if it wasn't wrong. And we see that today, the fractures, because people don't know how to forgive like Christ forgave us. If I go home tonight and I say to my wife, hey, I love you so much, but that's just because my neurochemicals right now, my endorphins are firing in a certain way. That's the only reason why I love you. You know love is something more than that. Just like when you get back to personhood. You brought up personhood. You brought up you having a self. See, when he brought that up, I was standing right behind you and I heard a lot of, there was no response. That's why a Christopher Hitchens, who's my favorite consistent atheist, he was hilarious, was consistent until he died on his deathbed. And what did he say about that very issue?
So I don't know.
Well, I'm about to tell you. He said when the doctors were coming in saying, yep, the cancer's gotten pretty bad, they referred to a self, you, Christopher. And he said, don't call me you and don't call me self or person. It's just my body that's rotting away right now from this cancer.
Sure.
That's consistent. That's consistent because he's a materialist, because he understands he's an atheist.
So I like the project here. There's a lot of good questions going on that we could all spend all day answering. The reason I didn't answer the self one.
All right, last point, then we got to move on.
Okay. The reason I didn't answer the self one is because you guys would hammer down every time I answer myself. That makes no sense. It's inconsistent. You guys are being inconsistent, but you won't recognize that. I'm very worried about the point that you can have love without being a materialist, but those two things don't follow. And I know it doesn't matter because there's so many things.
Kinship, kindness, but to your own tribe.
No,
you cannot have self-sacrificial love. Steve Jobs even said this on his deathbed. He said, I don't believe that you can actually have ineffable love from an evolutionary perspective.
Steve Jobs is not
See,
my
you're just saying, I don't care who your philosopher is. Let's just stick with the point where it's you're saying this love that is out there from a materialistic perspective. Where is this ineffable, immaterial love that we all want, that we believe as a theist? You came from love and you're going through love. You're not falling through a trapdoor into nothingness and it's just death from an atheistic perspective.
So I have some friends where we talk about like how they believe that women shouldn't be preachers or women shouldn't be able to talk about God.
Yep.
And how it talks about that in the Bible, or maybe not that specifically.
Right.
And then other friends who are just like, why would someone say that? Like, why would someone want to like put women behind men? So I just want to hear like your thoughts on that and
You bet.
what you think.
That's a great issue you're raising. Why? Because I meet a lot of women today who say, I am really angry about the sexism in our culture. And I look those ladies in the face and I say, I'm right with you. For a man to look down on a woman as inferior is sick. But the question is, why is woman valuable? And here's the answer that I get from too many of my feminist friends. Woman is valuable because she's just like a man. That's a pathetic reason that woman is valued. I hope, ladies, you don't think you're valuable because you're just like men. Because now you're still begging the question, why are men and women valuable? And I can promise you a woman is not valuable because she's just like a guy. No, false. The Bible gives us the basis for the value of every man, every woman, every transgender, every LGBTQ, every racist, every ethnic heritage person in the world. And the basis is God created every single one of us in his image. What do you think that man stood for? Exactly what I just said. Dr. Martin Luther King understood all human beings are created in the image of God. That is why racism is wrong. Because racism is saying, I'm inferior, I'm superior, and you are inferior. And that is a lie. That is arrogance. It's demeaning a person. God created every single human being in his likeness, in his image, which means we all have equal value and dignity. You take God out of the picture, and I'll tell you why woman's valuable. Because our culture says, if your body's proportioned correctly, you're a babe. You're valuable. What a crock. Our culture says, man, if you've been in the weight room a lot and you're buff, you're a stud. You're somebody significant. That's a lie. Our culture says, if you got a 4.0 GPA, whoa, you're somebody. That's a lie. I've got a sister who's mentally challenged. I got a brother who transplants kidneys at Duke University Hospital in North Carolina. I can promise you, my brother, who's a transplant surgeon, is not more valuable than my sister, who's at a third grade educational level at the age of 59. And if anybody goes to my brother and says, whoa, you know, you're really valuable, and your sister, who's mentally challenged, is a loser, my brother intellectually will bust the dude's chops. Why? Because you gotta think. Why are any of us valuable? If there is no God, none of us are valuable innately. We just give ourselves value, or our culture gives us value if we happen to be a winner instead of a loser. Guys, think. You've got to think this stuff through. No God, you're an accident, I'm an accident. If there is a God who created you in his image, you and I both have intrinsic, innate value. It's that simple.
Like women in the church shouldn't be allowed to speak. So I'm confused on like, is that just contextual because it's in the Old Testament, or is that like biblically is it a belief that like women shouldn't be pastors or shouldn't speak?
I myself am convinced that Genesis 1 and 2 teaches male and female are part of the image of God. Now the fall occurs, and one of the things that happens is men rule over women. Not because God wanted that to be, but because that was a natural outworking of the fall, of sinfulness. I think that's Genesis 3:16. And God says, watch out, man will rule over woman. Not meaning that that's the way God created it to be, meaning instead, that is going to be one of the ramifications of sin. Then you go on, and you got a lot of sexism in Israel. No question about it. Women are viewed as very inferior. But guess what? That's nothing compared to the rest of the cultures around the world. I mean, women were horribly treated. Horribly. And guess what? That's been true in our culture. Women have been horribly treated. You're valuable because you're a good-looking sex object. I mean, that has been pounded into people in our culture. It's sick. No. And Hugh Hefner did women no help, and Playboy philosophy and all that garbage. So no, a woman is valuable because of what the Bible says. She's created in the image of God. Men are valuable because they're created in the image of God, and we're not going to dump on each other. That's sexism. All right, now, what about the New Testament? Women in the church were treated as equal to men, and they went nuts. That was beautiful. That was incredible freedom. Compared to all the cultures around them, it's amazing. So they go nuts, and they abuse their freedom at times. I don't blame them. I would have done the same thing. You mean I'm not inferior to somebody else? No, you're not. You're a sister in Christ, you're a brother in Christ, we were all equal. And they abused that freedom. And I would argue that 1 Corinthians 12 and 14 and 1 Timothy chapter 2 are examples of how Paul is saying, watch out, sisters, let's not abuse this freedom. Let's keep order in worship. I don't allow a woman to speak. Okay, and then 2 chapters later he says, when a woman prays and prophesies, she's to have her head covered. Well, what are you talking about, Paul? Are you contradicting yourself? No. But he's addressing different situations, different issues. Yeah, he says some really weird things in 1 Timothy 2. Like the last verse, women will be saved through childbearing. What? Are you saying, Paul, that women are going to be saved by having babies? Obviously not. What's he addressing? Well, when you study Ephesus, they had a religion called Diana of the Ephesians, a goddess who they worshipped, Artemis of the Ephesians. And what happens is, when you get into goddess worship, then all of a sudden, woman is it. And part of that religion is Gnosticism, which teaches your body is evil. Therefore, if you have sex and you bring a baby into this world, that's dirty and evil. And so Paul says, are you kidding me? God created our sexuality. God allowed us to have babies and bring babies into the world, and that's a beautiful gift from Him. It's called creating life. What an amazing gift from God. So Paul is dealing with a really warped situation there in Ephesus. So be careful the way you interpret those difficult verses. That make sense? Yes. Thank you, ma'am, for raising that.
So if the Bible was written by people who were living humans, was not written by God Himself.
Yep.
Then what is stopping us from adding more into the Bible today? Like, what is stopping me from writing more letters as if I'm the Apostle Paul? Like, what is stopping that?
That's a great question. Because Christ came at a specific time and said, here are specific words, gave these words to the disciples, many of whom were obviously living with him, not all 72. But they said, okay, well, now we're going to make disciples of all nations. But you have the Gnostic Gospels and other Gospels coming later. Now you have not history, you have great hyperbole. You have extremism of character and personality, and no ancient historian would say, oh, that's written as history. So the book eventually has to be closed, right? Because Jesus came at a specific place and time. The God of the universe came at a specific place and time, said, I am going to pass this message off to those who've encountered me, and then to those who are close friends with those who've encountered me, the eyewitnesses. And now the message is here, and it's getting out. I'm going to ascend to the Father, and so we've got to close these manuscripts. We've got to close these Gospels, or people who had no connection to Christ are going to write later, and then things are going to get sullied in that way. So that's one reason.
You've got to think through, why is the New Testament made up of just 4 Gospels? Because there were a lot of alternatives, especially over a few hundred years. Gospel of Peter, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Pontius Pilate, Gospel of Mary. Okay, so what criteria did the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century use to include and to exclude certain Gospels? First point, it had to be written by an eyewitness or by someone who knew an eyewitness. Well, somebody writes today, Jesus was a Republican. I'm sorry, you never met Jesus? Obviously, the Republican Party did not even exist back then. So no, Jesus was not a Republican or a Democrat. He wasn't a Democrat either. Okay? And Jesus didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Right? He was a Jew. So you got to be real careful. So the first test to be included in the New Testament was written by an eyewitness or someone who knew an eyewitness. Luke was not an eyewitness, but Luke knew eyewitnesses. Second test was, does this document agree with Orthodox Christian faith? The Gnostic Gospels contradict Orthodox Christian faith. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Barnabas are based on Gnostic philosophy, which teaches your body, evil. Your spirit, good. Get rid of your body, because it's the spirit that's good. And that contradicts the Bible. The Bible insists God created both your body and your spirit. So, a lot of the Gospels, quote unquote, reject either the Orthodox Christian faith or they were not written by an eyewitness or by someone who knew an eyewitness. That is why they were excluded from the New Testament. And that's why if somebody writes a document today, it's obviously not going to be written by an eyewitness or someone who knew an eyewitness. Thanks for raising that issue.
So Jesus told the rich guy, if you want to like follow me, sell everything you have and give it to the poor.
Yeah.
And they talked about the camel in the eye of the needle.
Yep.
So is money evil? Like is living in luxury bad? And what should we do? Like how should we function in that way? Because we need money to live, right?
We sure do. Okay, so is money evil? No. But in 1 Timothy 6:10 we read, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. And guess what? You can be dirt poor and love money. And you can be one of the wealthiest billionaires in the world and love money. So the issue is not money itself. The issue is your attitude. What's going on in your heart? So, what does the Bible teach about money? First of all, don't gamble. Why? Because money's valuable. Don't play games with your money. Invest wisely, save, be shrewd. Secondly, make what you can and save as much as you can. Saving is good. It's being shrewd in handling your money. But thirdly, give as much away as you can, because Christ calls us to be generous. Fourthly, am I concerned about the issue of money in my life, in the life of every American Christian? You bet I am. You know, I'm really embarrassed the way Christians 200 years ago had slaves in the United States, took them to church on Sunday. That's sick, tragic. But guess what? 100 years from now, Christians might be embarrassed by me over how much money I kept for myself. So we got to be real shrewd. We got to really pray about work, making money. Why? Because we all appreciate money. And money is very important. All right? Don't gamble, which is trivializing money. It's saying, I can play a game with money. No, no, no. Money is a gift from God. It represents your labor, your work. So work hard, make money. Save for a rainy day. Provide for your spouse, your children, maybe even your grandchildren. But do not live for it. And what's tragic is when people say to me on a university campus here in the United States, I don't believe in God. And I ask them, okay, fine, I understand. So what do you believe in? And they say, oh, I don't know. I don't believe in anything. I have to look them in the face and say, you know something? You're lying to yourself as well as to me. Because you and I both know why you're here at this fine university, is to position yourself so you can make more money. So don't give me this crock that you're not living for anything, that you don't have faith. You got incredible faith. You're convinced that the purpose of your life is to make money as much as you can. Now, if you're willing to think about that a little more deeply, you'll realize how superficial and trivial that is. Because what you're saying is, money is more important than people. And you know better than that. You know better than that. Not only that, Bill Gates, after a conference, speaking at a conference, was asked, if you lost your eyesight, and you could get your eyesight back, but you'd have to give up all your money to get it back, would you do it? And Bill Gates said, absolutely. Sir, your eyesight is more important than billions of dollars, isn't it? That is why it is so foolish and stupid to reduce the purpose of life to making money. Now, is making money important? Of course it is. Why? Because it symbolizes work. It's what you get for your work. And guess what? God created you and me to work, to join him in the creative enterprise, and that is good. But to reduce money, and to reduce the purpose of life to being making money, what a superficial, trivial existence you're living. Jesus says, no, don't cheapen yourself that way. Live to love God and live to love people and live in relationship with God, in relationships with people. That's really living.
When he talks too about you must hate your father and mother in order to follow me and truly love me, let the dead bury their own dead. He's obviously speaking in hyperbolic language. He oftentimes speaks in metaphor. We have apocalyptic literature over in Revelation. So he's stressing a point in terms of don't live for wealth, serve me with everything you have because I have to be number one in your life in order to love your parents. Because if he's saying hate your parents, that's simply what he's saying. In your love for me, it has to almost look like such great intensity that you hate your parents. That's how much more you're supposed to love me than your parents. And you say, oh gosh, that's extreme. I really love my parents, I love my dad over here. We're doing this together. But if you have God as number one, that will give you an opportunity to love everything else in your life in a much better way where you can actually flourish. Think about this one, for example. In our town, we have many people who would say, many parents who would say, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm only as happy as my least happy child. You think, wow, okay, there's something to that. I can empathize to an extent. But what if that child dies? Is that person just going to give up? They're going to commit suicide? Or what about, if I love my child that much as God, I'm going to suck the life out of that child. They're going to eventually get embittered and hate me. Or there's going to be some weird enmeshment going on, and that child's never going to be able to live their own life. So putting God as number one, going and selling everything you have in a type of hyperbolic language, saying, you have to love me that much more than your possessions. You have to love me that much more than your parents, in terms of let the dead bury their own dead. Unless you hate your father and mother, you can't be a disciple. That's what he's talking about in how much you need to love him. And the weird thing is, the more you do that, the more fun you'll have in life. The better your life will be, especially when going through suffering. Because you can't take money, you can't take your family, you can't take your friends, you can't take your integrity, your intelligence, you can't take anything from this earth to heaven. All of that is finite. God is infinite.
I am one of the most blessed fathers in the world. I get to work with my son, and I love the living daylights out of him. If I idolize him and turn him into God, that's tragic. Absolutely tragic. And he's got to know that I want him to go wherever God calls him. I hope we can minister together for many years to come. But if God calls him somewhere else, he's got to go. Because God is God, I'm not his God, and he's not my God. And he's already gone over very well enmeshment and how messy it gets when you worship your family. And the tragic thing is there are too many wonderful Americans who live for their family. Family's awesome. It's not God. And every family's dysfunctional, beginning with mine. Okay, we all have problems. Why? Because we're all sinners. All right? But man, I love this guy, and I'm having a blast working with him. And I hope we can do it for many years. But that's God's determining, not mine. And that brings health to our relationship, not enmeshment. Thanks for raising that more personal question.
So God is infinite, so why wouldn't his light be infinite? Therefore, there shouldn't be any darkness, especially in Adam and Eve. And since our hearts are deceitful, if Adam and Eve were created and their hearts were deceitful, that had to have come from God, right? And that was like his point of view.
Okay.
So where did that darkness come from?
You got to be real careful with a lot of those thought lines that are going down the pike here, okay? First point. The reason there is anything at all is because God is an eternal being without beginning, and God chose to create something when there was nothing. And guess what? The only thing you get from nothing is nothing. You never get something coming from nothing. That is one of the pieces of evidence that I have for God's existence. Something is here. This something is not eternal. The Big Bang theory clearly points that out. You never get something coming from nothing. Okay? So that's the first point I would make. Second point I would make is be very careful when someone says to you, God is infinite. You got to redefine that one probably for them, real careful. What we mean when we say God is infinite is not God does anything that comes across his crazy imagination. No. God is reasonable. God is good. God is not hypocritical. So God just doesn't do anything. He's not infinite in that he encompasses everything. Okay? God is infinite. What I mean by that, I think what the Bible means by that is God is omnipresent. God is omnipotent. God is omniscient. He knows everything. He's not going to be surprised tomorrow by something, new information. But it doesn't mean, just be very careful with that infinite idea. You know, God's infinite means I'm part of God and you're part of God. No, it does not.
We are God.
Exactly. Well, that's often what a person means when they say God is infinite. It means everything is part of God. No. I am not part of God. I am a separate individual who can live in relationship with God or not. And the final one is this. Well, they say they're a Christian, but I don't know. Okay, I think there are a few guidelines that the Bible does give us to define Christian. If I deny the deity of Christ, or if I deny his bodily resurrection, I don't think I'm a Christian. Secondly, if I tell you I'm a Christian and I hate him, and I hate him, according to 1 John, I'm on really thin ice. If I say I love God and hate my brother, I'm a liar. Now, might I struggle with hatred towards him? Might I struggle with hatred towards him? Yes, but the operative word is struggle. If I just say I'm going to hate him, and I'm going to hate him, and I'm going to hate him, and I'm going to hate you, and I could give a rip, we got a real problem here. I don't know if you are a Christian. Do Christians struggle with hatred? Do Christians struggle with racism? Yes, they do. And that's sad, but that's a fact. And I struggle with all of the above. But I'd better be struggling. Otherwise, who do I really trust?
Like, Paul wrote a lot of the books of the Bible and stuff,
Yeah.
and like, we trust him and we trust his word. Like, why do we trust him and not, like, I don't know, I'm thinking of like Joseph Smith, who started
Yep.
Mormonism or whatever,
Yep.
and he said he had a revelation from God.
Yep.
And like started a book and all that stuff. So why do we trust Paul but we don't trust him?
The reason that I trust Paul to give me accurate information is because the eyewitness community who knew Christ accepted his writings as legitimate. See, so much for me comes back to who's reliable. And the bottom line for me is the evidence, historical in nature, of the way he lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead is Jesus is reliable. Now, the way I find out about Jesus is from the eyewitnesses who saw him, who heard him. They wrote what they saw and they heard. Their writings were accepted as legitimate, historically reliable. The Gnostic Gospels were not accepted as historically reliable, and they were not written until the 2nd century. They were not written by eyewitnesses. The Gospel of Thomas was not written by Thomas. Good gracious, it's probably not written until 120, 130, 140. Thomas was not around at that point. He was dead. So his name is attached to a fake gospel that is not historically accurate. The early church knew that, and they rejected it as, no, not reliable. So the reason I accept Paul's writings is because the eyewitnesses of Christ, who knew Christ, who put their faith in him, accepted Paul's writings as legit.
The 4 Gospels are the story of Jesus, and we want to make sure it's accurate. How come there's some inconsistencies between the 4 of them? For example, the one I'm thinking of is like the story of the fig tree. Jesus like curses a fig tree, and one gospel says it withered immediately, and then one gospel said later on in the day it was withered. So there's some, and there's another one with like the genealogy of Christ. There's
Yep.
2 different genealogies
That's
and they're
right.
different.
Yep.
So how can we still like trust the gospel if there's those inconsistencies?
Good question. When you talk about inconsistencies, read them carefully. Realize that perspective is crucial. You and I are standing on a street corner. We see 2 cars come down the road. There's a screech of brakes. A woman screams, and there's a collision. If you and I go to the police and you say, "Officer, I saw the 2 cars coming down the street. A woman screamed and there was a collision." And I say, "Officer, I saw the 2 cars coming down the street. I heard a screech of brakes and there was a collision." Are you and I contradicting each other? No, exactly. We are offering two equally valid perspectives on what really happened. There's a book called The Day Lincoln Was Shot. Does that book record every second of Lincoln's last 24 hours? Every thought, every imagination, every deed? No. What is history? History is a selective account of what happens. No history book gives us every detail. None. That is why we want different eyewitness accounts to get different perspectives on what really happened. Now, if you have a contradiction in a text, then we have got a problem. But I would argue that the two genealogies in Luke 3 and Matthew 1 do not contradict each other. There are some options. One option that I take seriously is, one of Luke's main points is, Jesus was not born literally, physically, as a son of Joseph. He was born of a virgin, Mary. And so Luke gives us Mary's genealogy, tracing back to Abraham, and Matthew gives us Joseph's genealogy, tracing back to Abraham, showing that clearly from both Mary's lineage and Joseph's lineage, Jesus was the line of Messiah. The fig tree, when you have words like immediately or at the end of the day, be very careful there. Very careful. Right? I mean, immediately, what does immediately mean? Mark continuously in the Gospel of Mark says, and immediately, right away, Jesus went and did this. Well, that doesn't mean that he literally just right away went and did that. Mark is a writer who uses a lot of action, and Jesus is bopping around. He's writing for Romans who are action-oriented people, and so Mark records that.